record on this computer. Here we go.
Okay.
What's up? Hello. My name is Mark DeMayo, and welcome to my podcast, One-on-One with Mark DeMayo. And today's guest is a very funny comedian. She's a writer. She's an actress. She was called in the business amazing. You thought I was going to say triple threat, right? Her name is Vicky Kuperman, and I'm happy to have her. And what makes her this story even more interesting is that she was also the victim of a gunpoint robbery several months ago here in New York City.
Yeah.
And she's going to tell us about it and what happened. And hi, Vicky.
Hi.
It's good to have you. It's great to see you. I haven't seen you since the COVID, right?
Oh, yeah, since the COVID, since way before COVID.
I know. What a shit. This whole thing is crazy, man.
Wow.
So like I mentioned, I have you on because I want to hear the story about what happened to you and how you were robbed at gunpoint while walking your dog. But before we get into that, just to give people a little background on who you are, are you a native New Yorker?
No, I grew up in Boston, actually.
Uh-huh.
Sorry if you're a Yankees fan, but.
I'm a Mets fan.
Okay, good. Then I should hate you because of 1986, but anyway, another story. I like the Mets. I grew up in Boston. I was born in Russia, but I've been here a very long time, almost 20 years. And I've always lived in Hell's Kitchen these whole, basically 2 decades.
And for the people that are from New York tuning in, Hell's Kitchen is basically like, what is that, like 34th Street to 23rd Street?
No, it's like maybe 42nd to 57th.
Oh, okay.
West of 8th Avenue.
All right. So 42nd to 57th Street, west of 8th Avenue, which... Yeah.
Right next to the Broadway, right next to Times Square, right next to the Broadway District, Theater District. It's called Hell's Kitchen for a reason. It was a very bad neighborhood for a long time. So I did move here while it was getting a lot better, and I definitely benefited from that. I wasn't here when it was really bad. It's pretty bad now, so I'm definitely paying, my dues now. Mm-hmm. But Hell's Kitchen's great. I've always lived here, and as a comedian, it's great because it's so central. I just bounce to wherever I want, like, from Midtown. I mean, really convenient.
I've been to your place before. I don't know, like, do you mind if I say what the name of the building is?
Well, don't say the name of the building, but you can say that it's like subsidized for actors.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to give you your exact address. I was just going to say it's for actors.
Yes.
And you have to be, I would imagine you got to be in the Screen Actors Guild and then after it, right? No,
you don't. You just have to be a performer or like adjacent to Broadway. So like an usher on Broadway, a makeup artist on Broadway, an actor, a musician, a composer. A lot of musicians live here. Mm-hmm. And this building was really central to turning this neighborhood around because like in the early 70s, no families wanted to live here. So then this whole program started where they're like, let's build a building that's subsidized for the actors who work right here in Broadway. And then they can live here and like with their families, and then they're going to need things, but it's, so they'll go out to dinner, they'll need things, and then we'll help the economy of the neighborhood. So in 30 so years, they turned around Hell's Kitchen. I mean, this building was vital to that. I mean, I'm sure Giuliani, had a part, but.
That I remember one of the things that I found fascinating, because obviously since we're both performers, everybody would love to live in the city. Yeah. That's like a dream. Right. It just makes life so much easier as a performer. Right. But that building, I think there's a big waiting list, right?
Yeah, I probably waited 12 years. So yeah, 12 years.
It's funny because nobody thinks about time, especially you were much younger then. But you had somehow you had the sensibility to know, why not just sign up for this thing and who knows what's going to happen. And then 12 years goes like this, right?
Right. I say that all the time. It was like maybe one of the only smart things I did in my early 20s or whatever it was, like sign up in this building. It took nothing. And then it's not like I'm sitting waiting. I lived my life for 12 years and then I got the building. Like crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing. But you were still living in the area before that. You liked that area.
Yeah, I was living in studios like at 43rd and 45th. They were great, and I loved my life. And like, to speak to Hell's Kitchen, like I walked around in safety, as a woman, you obviously, I think my family was concerned, because women walking around at night, but I really never felt unsafe.
Your family's still in Boston?
Yeah. I have a few family members in New York, but mostly in Boston. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you made the trek down here by yourself, but you do have some family down here.
I do. I mean, I didn't move with them, and like I didn't even know I had cousins here. I have so many cousins that I was like, oh, he's here? Wait, she's here? Okay.
Uh-huh.
So I moved here like 2 weeks before 9/11, and
Anybody by Brighton Beach over there?
I love Brighton Beach. Yes, I have a close friend near Brighton Beach. I go to Brighton Beach every summer.
Uh-huh.
Ocean View Cafe. It does not have a view of the ocean, of course.
When you hear the people speaking Russian behind you, it's like the motherland, right?
That's right. I do speak fluent and I understand it. So
yeah, that's great. And I know you have a book too. What's the name of your book?
Oh, How to Spy on Your Neighbor, Your Survival Guide for the United States of Russia. It's like a political humor book about like living in a Russian autocracy and like what you're gonna have to start doing, like wiretaps in your plants and all that stuff. So yeah.
And one of my favorite, you also produce web series with Kendra Cunningham, another hilarious comedian, and the two of you are like, I don't even want to compare you to like Abbott and Costello because I'm trying to think of another female duo. I mean, obviously now we have them in current movies, but I'm trying to think of in the past. Lucille Ball, I guess her straight was. No, I'm drawing a blank, right? But you know who I'm talking about. Her partner on I Love Lucy. But you two are just incredible together. I just cry laughing. Timing, and I was also fortunate to be to act in one of your other sketch shows.
Lonely Girl, 48.
Lonely Girl, where
you were great at that.
You trapped me in the bathroom.
Yes, that was so fun. I remember that at the bathroom of Gotham Comedy Club.
I'm not gay. Yeah, that was great. That was really, really great. And those are two web series that my audience should definitely check out. What's the one with the two of you are bumbling cops?
It's a Boston Beat. And we always say, like, we really want to pitch it and get it made. And we're like, there's going to be a role for Mark.
Uh-huh.
Perfect for that.
Oh, thanks. That's great. And the other one is Lonely?
Yeah, Lonely Girl 48. So.
Lonely Girl 48, yeah. And am I missing any other web series?
Well, I have one I started with Max. It's quarantine, love in the time of quarantine, where we pretend to go to a therapist on Zoom to deal with each other during quarantine. That's on my YouTube, so you can check that out.
You're seeing a therapist through Zoom?
Yeah.
But both of you are in the same apartment?
Max, no, it's with Max, my husband.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But both of you are talking to the therapist from your own apartment?
Yeah.
Sitting next to each other like that?
Yeah, it's like couples therapy together.
I got to see that. That's got to be hysterical.
Yeah. It's a lot of like.
Do you see the therapist? Who is it? Who's the therapist?
She's hilarious. She's Rachel Butera. She's out of LA. She's an incredible impressionist. Like, really, she does like everybody. She won like whatever it was, like the last comic standing of impressionist shows. She won it. And she's great as the therapist. She's like such a classic, like, she's never heard of the outside world. She's never heard of the quarantine or the pandemic. She's just been in her little bubble wearing her hat. Yeah, it's great.
You know, it's funny because I'm trying to build up, just so my audience has, because you mentioned the word bubble. I want to write that down. That's an important word for us right now, bubble. But so I'm just trying to get a grasp. My audience, I want to know what kind of work you do, and then like the type of day that you have. Like, you're not working like a normal 9 to 5 anymore, are you?
I am actually. I work in a media creative job. I work as an associate creative director for branded content. So I do work. Luckily, I've been able to work from home this whole time because obviously comedy's dried up, like, the touring. Mm-hmm. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention, speaking of that, right before the shutdown, we had the most like successful tour. We sold out Laugh Boston, which is a really huge club in Boston, with our comedy couples tour called Love's a Joke. So it was like Tom Cotter and Carrie Louise, Bernadette Pauly and Al Ducharme, Nikki Sunshine and Jamie Roberts, and me and Max, and we did 4 nights. And like we'd switch out the couples each night, and we sold out. You know, we were like shaking hands with like 1,800 people. Like, I don't know how we didn't get COVID, seriously, because it was like mid-February. Looking back, you know.
Wow.
But as we shut down, we were like, well, why don't we take the audio from all these comedians and make an album of all comedy couples? And it's called Love's a Joke. It came out in June, number 3 on iTunes. So check it out. It's really good comics. It's really good.
No, I know everybody that you mentioned there, and they were all great comedians.
Yeah.
And when you said you switched out the comics, that meant obviously if you have 4 couples and 8, everybody's going to do time. You can't have 8 couples doing. You're not doing like a, yes.
So Max and I performed every night. We like put together the tour, and then like the first 2 nights it was Bernie and Al, who came from LA, and they were traveling to another gig. And then the Saturday night, it was Nikki and Jamie and me and Max. And then Sunday night, Tom and Carrie came from a gig in Connecticut, a Valentine's gig. So it was like perfect. But I have the same story all of us have, which is like, oh, I was finally figuring it out and everything shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we finally made a lot of money in comedy in a weekend and it's over.
That's so funny that you say that, because I think I try not to really talk about it with anybody, because I don't want to sound like I'm feeling sorry for myself.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people that lost a lot more than I did.
Yes, I agree.
And stuff like that, and these kids that lost like their prom and their graduation and all these other things. But for a lot of for us, this is like a business.
Yeah, it's our life.
Everybody had their own thing going on right before. We were going to launch on a platform for our podcast.
Yeah.
On the 15th of March, and it got canceled because of because they had just canceled the St. Patrick's Day parade. So, and then they canceled that. So that's just one. And then I also think about these people that got cast in leading roles on shows that were going to start a production, and the whole thing is like squashed now, canceled. You just got a lead role in a movie, in a film. Now the money's gone. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's got to be like, what a shame. But
I know people who were about to have huge theater tours and be like, finally make a lot of money. Like, way more, like, it was set. Dates were set. Tickets were being sold. Like,
yeah, there's so much of that. And, like we're in this city, we're all the kind of sort of the same. We're all on each other's energy wise. And if you're not, you're kind of going to get left behind.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? You're going to get lost in the shuffle, because we're all moving quick. We're all doing tons of things every single day. And back to that point. So your life basically is you have the dog. What's your dog's name? Coach.
He's sleeping on the couch.
So, you have the job. You walk your dog how many times? 4 times a day? 3 times a day?
3 times a day.
You got you have a routine.
Yeah.
And when you came to the city, what year was that? Again, you said 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, 01.
2001.
Yeah, almost 20 years ago.
All right. So I'm just thinking back, like the city was getting together, and it was definitely.
It was 2 weeks before 9/11, the last 4 months of Giuliani. Bloomberg was taking over.
Yeah, Giuliani had straightened it up quite. He was a visionary. I mean, I remember when I grew up here in the city, and you talk about you had heard when it was bad, but you were fortunate enough to come here when it had gotten better. And when it was bad, it was bad. Like, they had a word. They weren't even called robberies. They were called muggings. They just happened so much. And it was just like, comedians used to have jokes like, I got robbed today. And I think it was Richard Pryor. It was like, yo, where's my dollar? Because, your mother used to give you $1 for the mugger every day, or for the bully in school. And then whoever was telling the joke, maybe it was Freddie Prinze, the kid had to tell him, I spent your money, I don't have the money. Like, what do you mean you don't have my money? Like, it was like that's how often you got robbed. in this city, or mugged, or you just knew there was so many precautions you took, neighborhoods you didn't go into, times you didn't leave your house. All this because outside it was violence, and especially depending on what time of day you were out. These were just things that you knew became second nature. You don't go. One comedian I remember had a joke about being reminded that the train is going to stop at 96th Street. Yo, white boy, 96th Street, like reminding him. He was saying, yo, wake that white boy up. He's got if we're on 96 because he's got to get out. Those were jokes. Those were jokes that comedians told back then. That's because that was true. And now we get to a point where it was completely different. Giuliani made Times Square Disney. I remember when I heard that, I was like, this guy's insane. It's never going to happen. And then that's why he's a visionary. But anyway, so.
Well, I have jokes now about how dangerous it is again, because I have a joke about that there's so many meth addicts in Times Square. It's now called Disney on Ice.
Oh, yeah, that's great. That's perfect.
I mean, I have a lot of jokes about my neighborhood, Yeah.
So now you're living here, and you really, you came at the perfect time.
Yeah.
You came at the perfect time. And like I said, your routine is part of it, is walking your dog. What kind of dog walk do you go on? Me, I go once around the block. That's it. But tell us, what were your dog walks?
Well, I mean, yesterday morning I walked my dog for an hour.
No, I'm talking about before.
Oh.
Let's go back before the robbery.
So, really 30 to 60 minutes a walk, like a long walk. Like, I'll go a few blocks west to the pier, the Hudson River. If we're up, sometimes I'll walk up a little across the pedestrian footbridge. I mean, I have a pit bull, and they're not like the most active. They're kind of lazy, but they're not. They need to get their energy out. And I also like walking with my dog because I've loved my neighborhood up until a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's enjoyable.
So it's safe to say you take a 30 to 60-minute walk with your dog, once, twice a day?
In the before times, both Max and I are out all day, so we have a dog walker once a day, and then he'll take him in the morning, or I'll take him in the morning, and he'll take him at night. So the dog gets walked 3 times a day, not always by me.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I don't usually walk him at night. I do now because everything's different, but before I'd walk him in the morning because I just hate how crowded everything had gotten, so I don't like walking at night.
But you were comfortable. You were fine, right?
Oh, please, yeah. I had the privilege of living freely in Hell's Kitchen in perfect harmony for 18 years at that point.
Free enough to walk your dog for 30, 60 minutes all through the neighborhood, right?
Oh yeah.
And then so take me back.
Earbuds, listening to headphones too.
Yeah, see, that's another thing. It's like all the little things that you just take for granted. Now you got earbuds on, and then not only do you have earbuds on, but you're walking your dog and like this with the phone.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, I was saying when you do this with the phone outside, now I've realized you're basically saying I have $1,000. Mm-hmm. I'm holding $1,000. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's very interesting.
So
that's another thing, that people take for granted is these things like the phone now, because everybody has one. But when we talk about the city back in the day, you never flossed. You never, if you had a radio, or what we used to call like a boombox, you're usually walking with 3 or 4 friends. I remember running home with my radio on top of my shoulder because I was just with one friend and there was 4 guys chasing us to get the radio. And this was just, we just got surprised. But, So
another comedian told me, a woman, she said she's really obsessed with reading books about crimes against women especially. And she's like, headphones are like, you can't do it because it says 2 things. It says, I can't hear you. And it also says, and it also sends the message that basically that person knows you can't hear. Whoever is approaching you, they know you can't hear and you can't hear. That's 2 messages you don't want to send.
Yeah.
I have conflicted feelings about it because I think people should be free to walk around listening to headphones.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting that you bring that up because coming from the past New York and living through it, I always got annoyed by people who weren't careful with their stuff,
Yeah.
especially like purses
Yeah.
or knapsacks. You go into a restaurant, you put it right there on the floor next to you, and then you wonder why it's gone. You never peek at it, you never look at it. Somebody's moving into a table. You might even get a heads up from a really good waitress that tells you, "Hey, watch your bag." You're like, "Yeah, sure, whatever," and then it's gone. These kind of things happened all the time in New York City, and then I see just like with the phone or with jewelry, and most of all because I was a cop, and then when I became a cop, I started really noticing stupidity from people because that was going to be my responsibility now.
Right.
I was a detective for 13 years, and I investigated robberies for 5 of those years. So when you told me your story, I felt so bad for you because I knew exactly what you went through. Okay, so take us to that day. You're walking your dog. What time of day was it?
So it was, I mean, I remember it so well. It was Friday, November 15th. And so it was almost a year ago, 10 months ago. And it was around 6 p.m. And I usually don't walk him at night, but.
Yeah, but that's not even night, really, 6 p.m.
Exactly. However, if you remember, which we'll know soon, it gets dark pretty early, starting mid-November. So
Mm-hmm.
it felt like night. I was having pre-scheduled surgery Monday morning. So I was like, let me go take the dog out for a long walk because I'm not going to be able to walk him for like 8 weeks or something because of the pulling. He's really strong. And so I'm like, I'm going to go take him for a long walk. And Max is like, okay, I'll make dinner. I'm like, okay. So I leave the house and I go towards the river. And so I approach 42nd and the river on the west side. And it's at the Circle Line ferry. And as I approach, I see kids on bikes, just kind of like circling a little bit, but just, I really paid no mind to kids on bikes because that's New York. Where else are kids gonna go? We don't have suburban streets. There are so many kids on bikes in New York. Like,
Yeah.
they're part of the scenery, So I'm like, okay, kids on bikes, whatever. So I walk with the dog with my earphones and I have a purse. And I've never replaced the purse since. I have not worn a purse since that night. But anyway, so I go to the dog park, which is at like 44th and the river, and it's right across the Intrepid, like south of the Intrepid Museum, which is like a huge museum, and it's Friday at 6. Like, this is not like a deserted area. So I'm looking at the dog park with my dog, who's not allowed in because he's great with people, but not with dogs. And that's when I know the kids started
Wait. You bring your dog to the dog park, but he can't go in.
He can't go in. I just looked
So
at it.
basically, you're bringing me to like a strip club, but I got to wait outside the door and peek in the hole like this? What do you mean? Right?
I only remember this moment because I stopped there, and we looked in.
Your dog's like in jail. He's like, and then he probably knows people in there, and he's like, "Yo, what's up, man? How's it going?" And the other dog's like, "Yo, you didn't get in? You can't get in?" Like, nah, man.
They won't. Well, he has to say hi to his friends. Like, how you doing in there? How you doing out there? I don't know.
So while your dog's checking and saying hi to his buddies,
yeah,
standing there.
That's when I know they started like clocking me. Now in hindsight, because I stood there for like 20 seconds, and that's where they kind of like. I know that's where they kind of position themselves in the bushes.
Other people in the dog walk?
Just a few, but that's not where I was robbed. So then I made a left to go to the end of the pier, where I have gone with no issue. This is like Pier 84. They have kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding, family picnics. They have like salsa night. Like, I'm telling you, like, this is a Manhattan that has been developed for families, and we have like gay couples with chihuahuas. Like, it's like paradise, it's like Truman Show. Not anymore. And so I start walking towards the pier, and then like it was like this kid just like walked out of darkness near the bush, and like the gun was just pointed at my face, at my head, and he was like, give me everything on you right now. And then the other kids, they were all on bikes, they kind of surrounded me. So I do remember his face, but like, the barrel of the gun is really what I remember. And whatever people think they're going to do when someone holds a gun to their head, like, it's probably not what they actually end up doing. Because some people are like, I would like beat those people up. I'm like, maybe, but all I did was this, like not
How far away was the barrel of the gun to your head?
like that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
How
So,
far away physically? How tall was he?
well, he was like kind of like leaning on his bike, but
So he was still on the bike. His
kind
foot.
what?
He rolled up on the bike. You kind of laid the bike down and just went like that, right?
Yeah.
While the other kids circled around you.
And I didn't see any of them. And this is really important for the story because people kept asking me what the other kids look like, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, I barely know what this guy looked like. It's very hard to identify, make a positive ID. I just want people to know that it's very hard. So I said, okay, I'll give you everything. So I gave him my purse, my iPhone, my headphones. And then I've gone over this in trauma therapy a lot. That the next moment was the worst moment because I'm holding on to my dog. So my pit bull was useless, by the way. So like anyone who thinks a pit bull, he did nothing, like seriously nothing, which is probably good because if he had barked or growled, who knows what would have done. They did have a gun. But so anyway, the next moment was the worst because that's when I heard them snickering, figuring out what to do with me. So that's where it felt like I was, like it was just like a cold, like my blood ran cold.
When you say what to do with you, what kind of words were exchanged?
Like, I heard someone like say something like, let's kill this bitch.
Wow.
Or something like that, or like, let's fuck this, like not fuck, but let's fuck this bitch, like as in like fuck her up.
It could have been like, fuck this bitch, let's get it, like almost like saying, let's get out of here.
It could have been, but there was this very noticeable moment where literally my life felt like it hung in the balance of what these kids were about to decide.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of like circled me, and I just could feel the energy of them deciding whether they were going to hurt me. And the criminal justice system is so bad. I'll tell you about that later. But I did learn, not from my lawyers, but that they beat the shit out of the next guy they robbed. So like, it's very real that they could have really hurt me.
So the kid who put the gun to your head, is he the one that you handed your belongings to, or was there another kid that pulled up next to him and took your belongings? Do you recall that?
I believe I handed him my belongings, but then I don't know what happened with the transfer of anything.
And then once he had your belongings, then you said there was that moment that you heard the talking and stuff like that. How much longer after that what did they write off?
You sound like you're the cop interviewing me about the robbery, by the way. You're like in total cop mode. I love it.
Well, I'm just trying to put the picture, paint the picture in my head.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
then,
they took off after that. I mean, did anybody touch you?
No, thank God.
And I would imagine since they were on bikes, they rode off. I think you mentioned in earlier conversations that they were city bikes.
Yeah, I didn't know that at the time, but it turns out they were on stolen city bikes. Yeah.
Okay, so stolen city bikes.
Do you have a cop pad? Do you have like a NYPD pad?
I got a yellow pad over here, but
I love it. So then they rode off east towards 12th Avenue, the highway, because I'm still like west of the highway on the pier. And they were snickering, like they were really malicious. They were snickering. And then they turned back, like kind of pointing the gun and said, do not call the police. Do not tell anyone you saw us. Do not. Yeah. I was like, I won't. And I just stood there. I'm like, I don't know what to do right now. Like, because weirdly, there was nobody on the pier, like nobody.
Uh-huh.
And then they rode off and I could still hear their voices, but I decided to start walking because I had nothing. I had no phone, no wallet, no ID. So I started walking to the nearest like source of light, which was the Circle Line ferry terminal. And that was maybe the worst walk of my life because I'm walking with my dog who's like obviously senses something's bad, but it's not like he did anything about it because he's not a guard dog. And I like walk across this huge like plaza thing like really quietly and silently, and it was so dark and quiet weirdly, and it was just, I could hear them still. I could hear their voices. So I'm like, they could literally come back around and kill me. Like, it's literally nothing for me to do but try to walk. So, and I got to the Circle Line. The security guard put me in the back room. They called the police. The police showed up. You know, Mark, as you know, I mean, I hate guns, and I hated the gun that was pointed at me. But of course, I loved the NYPD's guns when they showed up because I felt safe. Mm. So it's kind of like, yeah, I wish there were no guns, but if there's going to be a bad gun, I'm glad there was a cop with a gun, like, in my presence, because I waited in that back office for a while, and I'm like, they could act, because I was alone, and I'm like, they could come back, like, who knows, you know? Mm. So, you know, and the NYPD asked me a lot of questions over and over, which I understand why they had to, because as you recount things, new things come out. So, like, you know, I appreciate that. Who's it called? The head of the precinct, the commanding officer came in a suit. Yeah. You know, he showed up. He was asking me where it was robbed. I went back to the place. At this point, Max came. I called him from the back office. They were like looking.
How did you remember his number?
That's what everyone says. Oh my God. Leave it to comics. That's the punchline.
Isn't that funny? Like, I couldn't tell you one phone number, but under duress, you don't know what could happen. You see, I'm so fascinated by your whole state of mind right now, because somehow you're still functioning, but your whole bubble has been bursted. Yeah. All the confidence that you had, if you ever took some type of stupid self-defense course or ever got into an argument and won it, God forbid, somewhere in New York City, and now you think you know how to handle yourself. At that one moment, you know, something violent happens, and, you know, it's just something that, you know, it's a traumatic experience.
Very, yes.
To realize that, you know, how powerless we all are, really. Even if you were armed, for argument's sake, and somebody just got the draw on you, you know what I'm saying? Or, you know, it's anything. You just feel so powerless at that point, but you're still functioning. You managed to walk from the west side of the highway over there and cross over. You made it to Circle Line. Now you're sitting in the back office. Max shows up. The cops are talking to you.
I remembered his number.
You remembered his number. I guarantee you that if we did some deep psychotherapy right now, you'd realize you needed to remember that number, because that was your lifeline. Yeah. You know, back to normalcy. Your brain made you remember that number because you had to get back to normalcy. Right. And that was your avenue. Max was your avenue. So Max shows up. I remember you mentioned something about a helicopter.
Oh yeah. So cops show up. So it was Midtown South showed up. But it's weird because the actual like robbery, I guess, happened on the like near the line of Midtown North. So I ended up being switched over. But the Midtown South cops were hilarious. They were like, "Oh, you're gonna get in the car with us, and we're gonna go find these guys." Okay. I'm like, why would they still be in the neighborhood? He's like, you won't believe how stupid these criminals are. Okay, you will not believe it. Come on, we're gonna get a helicopter from Jersey. There's just no guns in this area. I don't know what's going on, but these idiots are probably at like 48th Street. Let's go. So it was like really like, it was great to hear this guy just talking about it in that way, because it was like a relief to me, because I didn't, you know. And then, you know, I still had the dog, and they were like, get in the car. And I'm like, oh, well, can Max come with me? They're like, yeah. I'm like, well, then the dog has to come, because the dog had nowhere to go. And he's like, well, I guess the whole fucking family's coming. Everyone pile in. And so we were like the Dukes of Hazzard. We all just like piled into the back with the dog. And we're like chasing him, and he's like, and then all these cops are behind us trying to find the kids. And our two cops are like, look at these guys trying to make the arrest. Everybody wants the fucking arrest. Jesus Christ, you got nothing better to do? It was so funny. So
they have a script, it's called. They got a description of the perps. And everybody wants to make a collar. So that's why everybody's looking right now.
So there was a helicopter above us looking too that came in from Jersey, because guns, at least at that time, were still pretty rare in this area.
Yeah.
Now that we've had the influx of drug dealers, it's not as rare. But anyway, I was like, oh, should I?
Canvas. It's called the show up. Well, the show up is if you actually find somebody that fits the script, but you're doing a canvas, so you're in the back of the RMP.
Right.
It's the
Right.
police car, and you're with Max the dog, and you're driving around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And you're looking to see if you recognize anybody, right?
Yeah. And it's they did do a what's it called when they do
Show up.
a show up on the street.
Grab somebody.
On the street, there was
Grab somebody.
yeah, some kids in a courtyard, and they didn't. Like I said, I really only saw one face, but none of them fit the description really. It was because I said he was wearing kind of like a puffy coat with like a hood and like back, and he had like kind of like curly hair, and they did do a show up, but the kids did not fit the description.
It's an interesting thing that now that you mentioned the show up. I mean, just think of this on about what we're going through with police right now.
Yeah.
Just imagine if your child was grabbed playing with his friends, even if it was just for 10 seconds, taken from one location with a cop to another location where he stands in front of a car and somebody from inside the car is looking at him, and then they're like, all right, go ahead. Like,
Right.
Just imagine that whole thing. Now, you're the victim of a robbery, and you're looking for your assailants. They put a gun in your face. One of these kids are armed. But take it from the other point of view. You're these kids' parents. What the hell are you doing? How dare you touch my son? How dare you pull him, detain him, even if it's so. There's all these dynamics that are going around and sentiments where you could lie. But when you're the victim at that moment, it changes all your beliefs, your political beliefs. They just go right out the window. And you want the person caught. You want the person punished most of the time. Maybe even you just want an apology.
Right.
But it was wrong. You were wronged.
Right.
And you were violent towards me. And that's not right. You should know that that's not right. You know what I'm saying? So that's back to the bubble being burst. Like, you're in this moment right now and you're still with the cops. But now there's got to come a moment where you didn't find the kids, right?
No, I think we found one, but to your point, like I was a little uncomfortable with the show up because I'm like, these kids aren't, but I didn't have much say in it because things happen so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And like, to the police's credit, they have every time I looked at any picture or a person in person, they said, do not feel pressure to make an ID if the person doesn't fit, which I know they're supposed to do, but I just don't think the narrative of that is out there as much. They were like really clear about it every time. They repeated it like 6 times. So I just
I mean, when you do a lineup, the words that you're supposed to say are the person that did this to you may or may not be in this lineup.
Right.
You have to be 100% sure.
Right.
If you're not 100% sure, it's fine.
Yeah, and that's what they said every time. I think there's a narrative that cops don't say that, even if they're supposed to. And that might be true in some cases. I'm just saying in my case, it was not true.
I mean, for me, I never wanted to get the wrong person.
Of course not, because that doesn't
solve it. I had a case one time where it was the same thing. It was a robbery like yours. I wound up grabbing a kid based off of an ID. We were driving around doing a canvas. The boy who was in the back of my car goes, that's him right there. So we created like a little diversion tactic-wise where I can scoop him up. And fast forward to, verifying who this kid was back at the station house, and then listening to where he was at that particular time, I was able to verify that the kid was actually in school on a class trip. And I spoke to his principal, who was there on the class trip as well. They verified it. So, you got to cut the kid loose,
Yeah.
to avoid an arrest. These things unfortunately happen. And the only savior in that point is you're going based on the victim. And I understand your apprehension as far as IDing somebody. But sometimes I used to wonder when I was a cop, like, are you just being apprehensive or you're just scared right now?
Right.
You're scared of what are the ramifications going to be once I said, yes, this is the person that did that.
Right.
Am I going to be locked into this person for the foreseeable future? Are they going to come back and hurt me again because I said it was them? There's so many thoughts going through your head. But I wanted to get back to that moment where it's you're done with the cops now.
Well, I'm not. There's more to the story. So,
Okay, go ahead.
as we're driving, like there's a show up. I go, oh, I should cancel my credit cards because they had everything, and I had Max's phone in the car, so I'm like, I could call like Amex and just give them my name. And the cop goes, wait a minute, don't cancel your credit cards. See what they use, and then we can go there. So I started calling my credit cards, and they were using them all around where we were.
Wow, shit.
So then they're like,
I
oh,
go back to how dumb they, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
The
that's
cop
what they were
was like, oh, they're probably around here right now. That's he knows what he's talking about. That
Yeah,
guy.
yeah. So then we went to CVS at 57th and 10th where they had just used my card.
Mhm.
And so like the cops, there's all these cops and they're like pulling the footage, and then there's so much footage, Mark. I mean, I can't believe there were no charges pressed. There's so much footage. It's so sad. And
You have clear pictures of stills of the people using the credit cards of their
yeah, with my name on them. Yeah.
Okay, so that's important to know that you actually have physical evidence at this point right now of people using your credit cards. Now,
Yeah.
let's go back to when you were on the actually getting robbed, because obviously you have a gun in your face. You say you didn't recall the kids circling around you, but once they drifted away, and the kid yells back at you, you're not seeing them there either.
Well, it was very dark still. It's like close to 7 in November at this point with not a well-lit pier. And I saw the backs of like outlines, but I would say there were like 5 to 6 of them.
But now that you're looking at the stills from the CVS and all the
Oh, I didn't see the stills at CVS when I was there because they had to like request the footage, and so we didn't see it yet.
Uh-huh.
But I did go back to Midtown North, and we did have a great detective, and he basically put me on a computer lineup, like to look a photo array.
Yeah.
And I looked through like 120 pictures, and I kept going back to number one. The first one I looked at looked a lot like the guy who robbed me, but nothing ever happened with that. I don't know. Maybe he's not the guy that, maybe he's smart. He's like, she saw me. I'm not going to be the guy that goes into CVS. I don't know. So they used my cards all over town. A smoke shop, which is the footage they used on the news. You saw the two guys really clearly in the smoke shop, and you saw them using my card in the pictures that my lawyers got that I never got to see. Because it went to family court, because it turns out these kids were like 15, 14.
So then if it goes to family court, they got caught.
2 of them got caught. They did get arrested because they put out the smoke shop footage on the news Sunday night, and like they were turned in. They had to turn themselves in. And but I learned like I want people to know, when you're a victim but you go to family court, which is for juveniles, so it's under 18, especially in Manhattan family court, or under de Blasio, actually, New York City. You don't get to know anything. Like I learned like over here and over there that they were 14 and 15. My lawyers told me nothing. I don't know their names. First of all, they know everything about me, these kids. They have my ID, they have my address, they have my name, they have my credit cards, they have my health insurance cards. I know nothing. I didn't know their names. They wouldn't tell me their age. They wouldn't tell me what other crimes they committed, which is fine. I get that. But like, I felt like these weren't my lawyers. I felt like these were the lawyers for the kids. And they were like, well, in family court, we're really here to solve problems before they do something bad. And I was like, what the fuck? They did something bad. That is so disrespectful to your client, like, or whatever I am. And I don't think people understand the enormity of pressing charges. Like, it's a burden. It's a huge burden. And when people are like, I can't believe that woman or that guy didn't press charges, maybe they're, I'm like, yeah, because it's a fucking burden. Like, family court, the justice system traumatized me more than the robbery.
Well, let's go back to the traumatizing thing.
Yeah.
Well, are you finished with your interactions with the police yet?
Well,
you were telling us about, you were going through the whole case, so.
Well, yeah. So the detective at Midtown North, I was looking through a photo array, and then he heard on the radio that the cops were chasing a kid on a bike, 6 kids on bikes. So they put me in a car, and we like whizzed down 7th Avenue the wrong way really fast.
Oh, this is still the night of.
and 5 of the kids had disappeared, and they had one kid, and they had him against the wall, and they like blocked me, and they were like, take a look at him. And they were like blocking me so the kid wouldn't see me. And I was like, he's not the guy who I saw. Like, he was definitely not.
Uh-huh.
I remember the guy I saw, and he was not the guy I saw. So, and I don't think the kids arrested were the guy that actually had the gun to my head either. So, I guess he was on a stolen city bike, so they actually brought him in for that.
Mm-hmm.
He was part of the group. I'm pretty sure, of course, don't quote me on that. But, you know, again, these kids, like, the cops aren't allowed to ask them any questions until a parent gets there. And then where there's a lot of kids with guns in the wind right now, and like, including the kids that robbed me. And that's what really bothers me. So yeah, so then they call you, I guess they arrested the kids the next week from the smoke shop footage, but of course they didn't spend a night. I don't even know if there is juvie anymore, but.
Are you talking about, yeah, there used to be, Spofford was a juvenile kind of jail.
Right.
Detention center, juvenile detention center.
Right.
I don't know whether they are. There probably isn't, because there's very little jails for adults right now in New York City. So I doubt they apparently this is valuable real estate. We need to get rid of it.
Yeah, apparently.
these jails in New York. But so you unfortunately, you know, that's the thing with robbery too, is because, you know, when it's a juvenile crime mostly, and it's an initiation into a lot of gangs, because, you know, nothing's really going to happen to you if you get caught. So
what bothers me is the gun is out there. The police did, I think, what they could. I don't know. I know sometimes you have to make a choice anyway about your cases, but the police arrested people. But the police were excellent the night of. All the detectives I dealt with are like, yeah, we want to make the streets safer, like, but the justice system keeps putting them back out.
The investigation always gets much tougher also as well, if you're dealing with juveniles, because, you know, photo arrays, they can't be used in most situations that include juveniles. Or if you can use it, you have to create a photo array with all the kids that are in the photo array have given their consent, which is good luck trying to get that. So I'm in the ballpark with some of this stuff. I've been retired for 9 years, so I'm trying to like recall it. But I know it's definitely anything that has to do with arresting or prosecuting a juvenile is much, much tougher. And meanwhile, they're the ones who commit most of the robberies. So I wanted to get to the moment that you get back to your place by yourself now. And
yeah, well, all of us came back together, actually, Max and the dog and I.
Uh-huh.
But it was weird. I was wired. I was traumatized. I was so grateful to just go to sleep in bed. Like, I really felt like I scored a death, because even a teenager who's not holding a gun to your head, like, teenagers are sketchy as fuck. I mean, you know, all teenagers are like loose cannons, basically. And to have that happen, and like, I was having surgery Monday, I was like, not okay. And, you know, I was holding it together because for survival, like you said, but the next few months were rough.
Well, you called me and we spoke, and I mentioned to you that you should get in contact with the Victims Compensation Fund and Board.
Yes.
Which is basically, it's a city program that's there for the victims of crimes, where you could get reimbursed for some of your losses. You could also, if you need help, trauma, maybe some possible PTSD, they can refer you to a therapist and getting help. And maybe some of that can be covered because you were the victim of a crime. So that's what they're useful for, the Victims Compensation Board. Yes. So you saw them.
Yeah, so I did go through that, and I have been getting PTSD therapy, and it's OVS, Office of Victim Services, does reimburse me. So I want people to know that there are services, even if the justice system fails you, even if those kids are out there with a gun, at least like there's something, because without trauma therapy, I don't know where I'd be. Because, you know, I was robbed very close to my apartment, so there's reminders of it everywhere. Like, Only recently I started walking outside without looking over my shoulder, and that was 10 months ago that it happened. So, but that's because of all the work of trauma therapy. And of course, now we have other issues in Hell's Kitchen because the mayor put a lot of people in hotels around here, as you probably heard.
Yeah.
They're being victimized by the drug dealers, so now it's a big mess. Like we just,
You know, it's funny, in the old days, if you had just moved here or you lived here for a while and it was the first time you got robbed, and you know, we take you out for a beer and you crack
right,
your cherry. You know what I'm saying?
right.
And this might this might become a tradition. Like, do you feel anything like because obviously now you're a survivor? Do you feel tougher now in some way? Like you know, you went through some shit. You're here now, and your instincts are they're definitely sharper now. I don't know if you probably, God forbid, you know, you're in a situation like that, you feel it. You're probably going to react a little bit quicker than you did the first time.
Well,
As
I
far as getting
know.
out of there.
Yeah, I look forward now. Like I will survey a street before I walk down it. You know, I'm like the cop who sits with his back to the wall at the restaurant. You know, I'm just like, I have to. And if I feel something sketchy going on, like you've got to remember too, I'm a woman, so like I've been walking around if I hear male footsteps behind me, but this has been my whole adult life. Like, you know, I am aware.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So I've always had that, but no, now I like will survey a street, I will survey a situation, I'll look at a person's body language. I walked the dog like 2 months ago and there were kids kind of circling me on bikes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, nope. And then I saw a security guard at the Chinese embassy actually, and then they just like went away. And I'm like, nope, could have just gotten robbed again. Nope. You know, but I would have turned around if they hadn't.
Uh-huh.
So, because now the bikes are not, kids on bikes are not just part of the background. Now
They're not part. Yeah, they're not part of the scenery. They're not extras.
no, they're not extras anymore. They're players in my movie. But yeah, I do feel like someone said, oh, well, that happens to everyone in New York at least once. So I'm like, oh, well, I guess it took 19 years to become a New Yorker.
Well, you know, that was the running joke about it all, was that it happens. It's going to happen to you at some point. It's going to happen to you. It might happen to you a couple of times. Everybody had a robbery story, but now we went through 20 years where that wasn't the case anymore. It was rare, you know, certain people. And then in our business, where the comedy business, where you tend to be out late at night, you know, coming home from a club after performing, and it's, you know, 1, 2, it could be 2:30 in the morning. You're using the subway.
Yeah.
A lot of our friends are taking buses and subways, and then going for a walk after that. And a lot of them live in what used to be sketchy neighborhoods that all of a sudden are turning sketchy again.
Yeah, well, I used to have a rule like after 11, 12, I would have to take a cab or a lift. But now, when, you know, between November and March, when there was still comedy, I pushed that up. I mean, I feel like I was not walking past 10, 9:30 from shows because of what happened to me. So, you know, people are saying New York's gone to shit. I'm like, New York was going to shit. Like, hello, I was robbed in November. Like, my terrible year started 6 months before the quarantine.
Yeah, it was definitely a progression, because when a lot of people will look back to the water bucket incident, you know, that kind of sort of was, you know, what the thing, there's a saying that goes, but when the water, whatever, the breaking point, but that was the beginning of it. Like when that whole thing went down, we noticed there was like this huge disrespect for police. There was other situations that happened throughout the country leading up to that, but that's the first time here. And then at the same time, bail reform was something that was just passed at the same time, and it took a couple of a minute. And you know, what's a funny thing too is, like, people will tell me, oh, there's a lot of crazy people in the city now, you know, they're all over the place. And I always tell them, it's the same amount of crazy people. It's just none of the other people are out.
Right.
More. So, you know, like, the reason why you just got attacked is not because anything personal. It used to be a numbers game. Somebody in this thousands of people were going to get attacked by that dude today. It just so happened that they're not around anymore. You were the only one walking down the street.
Right.
But your situation was different. Listen, when I worked in Harlem, these type of robberies happened every single day, 2, 3, 4 times a day. They're usually from the same clique. They all live in the same houses, and they hang out together. When I say clique, I mean they're usually in the same group, they're the same gang. You know what I'm saying? And the one of the things that's people always are shocked about is how young looking the kids were, because a lot of times they look like little kids playing because they have little kids' faces and they're small in stature. They're not quite teenagers yet, and now they got a gun to your face, and you're like, that's what scares you even more, because this person doesn't even have respect for life.
That's the thing with teenagers. And I mean, you bring up a good point. Like, what is going on with the supervision of children? Like, it's not all on the kids. I mean, where are the parents? Like, I just don't understand what is going
on. Right now, oh my God, where are the parents? I can tell you stories.
And like,
as far as that situation goes, I grew up in New York City, and we used to hang out back then. I mean, I was a 14-year-old kid going out to nightclubs and coming home 10 o'clock the next morning, or maybe even going to the beach afterwards. Doesn't mean I was robbing anybody. The supervision, just because of the lack of supervision, doesn't mean you're going to commit crimes.
True.
But these kids that are running around in these cliques, they have names for it. Back then it was called the jugs, and they rob people to get stuff.
Right.
And it was odd though, because you had a pit bull, and usually pit bulls are respected by, there had to be something that they watched. Even while they looked at you, somebody looked at the dog for a second and could tell it was, because that's odd that somebody would take a chance with a pit bull.
Yeah, I mean, I thought maybe because New York City kids know that pit bulls, I don't know, that they have a bad rap, but they're actually, I don't know. Maybe they weren't thinking, like that cop said, like, criminals are dumb.
I used to work at this nightclub. We used to have to come down, because there was always like a lot of people in the street there. And the way the bouncers used to keep the people away from the doors was with the pit bulls.
Right.
And everybody's scared of the pit bulls. That's why I'm like wondering how come this kid wasn't scared of the dog. Maybe peep the dog, something something the dog did. They could tell it was more like a domesticated dog. It wasn't really wild.
Well, they also had a gun, but I don't know if they would have fired it.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the gun goes, if I was interviewing at the time, I would be like, well, what did the gun look like?
Well, they did ask me that a lot, and I kept saying, kind of like your gun, but shorter, to the cops. Like,
so did it have a barrel on it? Can you see the bullets inside the barrel?
No, I don't.
Like a revolver?
It was like a small handgun.
So it had like you didn't see the bullets. You didn't see the round cylinder thing there.
No, it was like a black.
So basically, what I'm asking you is, was it a semi-automatic handgun?
No, I don't think so. I think it was like a black pistol that was short. It was really short, and I saw the barrel, and they were like, "What's there?" Well, I saw something, but I didn't see bullets.
Okay, but I mean, if you really look close, I shouldn't have mentioned the bullets, but you saw the barrel. So we're talking about a revolver.
Yeah, but like a black. Yeah, it wasn't. It was like a black grayish, like what the cops had, but shorter. Seriously, it was like that.
Yeah, it's like an off-duty weapon.
And then they were like, "Did it have an orange thing on it?" I'm like, "No." I would have known it was fake. It had like an orange.
Might not have known it was fake though, because sometimes they spray paint, like they'll spray paint the Glock green and orange. I mean, or green and pink or whatever, anything to make it look like a toy.
Right.
So it's not. So people don't. They do that a lot.
But the cops kept saying, "Are you sure it was real?" I'm like, "Of course not. I don't know anything about guns. That's I don't know if it was real. I just know they presented it as real."
I mean, it doesn't matter. The threat is what it was. And
it's an armed robbery, right?
Yeah, it's an armed robbery. So you've been getting the therapy, and now how are you feeling now?
I feel fine, but I'm very disappointed that. Well, I don't feel fine because, like, the pandemic, and I've been stuck in my neighborhood, and it's been rough, just in the streets. Like, it's just been uneasy, and I'm okay, but, like, the neighborhood's getting worse, and I don't really know if I should leave New York and all that stuff. But I'm disappointed in family court because they didn't move forward with charges, and there was so much evidence, and they kind of blamed me and said it's because you couldn't make a positive ID. And I kept saying, well, you didn't show me the picture of the guy who I saw. And also, don't forget too, like,
what you just mentioned. The positive ID is what it all kind of sort of hinges, because unless there was a round fired that we could prove the gun, there was no round fired. Unless there's really that's a case that's built on ID. So I don't think they were trying to. Yeah, maybe they shouldn't have phrased it that way, like, oh, because you couldn't ID.
Right.
But to say, listen, there's just not enough evidence right now to prosecute. But if something else comes along, like, so for example, what you could have, and it happens a lot, is what you call a pattern. These kids might have robbed, 5 or 6 other people that night.
They did. That weekend, they robbed like 4 people.
So now they get caught, and then now they're doing lineups.
Right.
For example, I don't know if that happened, but once again, doing a juvenile lineup is difficult. But if they're doing lineups, now you could get called. If you don't pick anybody out of the lineup, at least you got 4 or 5 other victims that may pick out.
Right.
They may get charged on 3 of those counts. So at least they're getting something. But it's a juvenile charge. It's a robbery. Nobody got hurt. So at the end of the day, they're going to get probation. That's just the world we live in right now. It sucks, but it's just a fact. I mean, we talk about, the victim right now is everybody's just throwing them away. It's like we're looking out right now for the perpetrators and the bad people more for some reason. I don't know why. What happened to the world that we just flipped over like this?
I don't know. I mean, it might be a very big correction for what has been determined to be systemic racism and unfair imprisonment, and it's like a big overcorrection.
But the defunding the police, and I just saw, I think it's Minneapolis, the governor said it's been a big mistake. And a lot of these people are not going to know what to do, because at the end of the day, and you mentioned this early on when you started with your story, when in a time of crisis, when you saw the police, and it doesn't really matter what act you were in the middle of doing. You could have been in the middle of protesting. You could have actually had a freaking Molotov cocktail and waiting, or maybe you had it in your hand and you're going to throw it at a cop car, and all of a sudden somebody comes over and punches you in the face for no reason and beats the crap out of you, and you don't know why. The first thing you're going to do is you're scared, right? And then you're going to wonder, where are the police? I want to report this. It's actually happened during what I just described. During the protest. I saw this. An Antifa guy giving a police report because he just got beat up to a cop. And the cop is taking the report. We're living in a freaking crazy world right now. It's unbelievable. But the first thing that happens is you look for a cop. And when you finally see them, that's your first moment where you feel like, okay, my situation is over now. I'm protected. What happens when they don't show up?
That's right. And I mean, I would hope that cops are just not because I do feel like cops are kind of tasked with a lot right now. They're taking teenagers to Madison Square Garden. They're doing homeless intervention. I don't know.
They all these things that they're also responsible for: the homelessness,
right?
The drug, the emotionally disturbed people,
right?
The juveniles, all these things. The reason why they all fall under the police department is, you know why?
Why?
Nobody else wants to do it. That's why.
Right.
If you took away these things that the police department had to do, they'd be so happy.
But isn't that what defunding the police is? Aren't we supposed to take those?
But let me ask you a question. When it comes to emotionally disturbed people, they just gave this guy over there $150,000, this ex-pimp, to be in charge of some nonsense over there, police advocate, I don't know. But when it comes to somebody who's been the victim of a robbery, right? Now you have a neighborhood coalition that's gotten together, and they want to catch these kids because the people in their neighborhood. So now you catch these kids and you bring them to a prosecutor who doesn't want to prosecute. What point does any of this make right now? Why are we just doing bullshit?
Right. I agree.
Create neighborhood police officers. They're going to they're going to apprehend these people because somebody has to make the kids stop. They're going to go to some make-believe court that's not going to do anything, and then they're going to go rob. So it's just make-believe.
Right. So, I mean, I from what I understand, I think people want to take some funds away from the police and help communities thrive, and maybe take away the homeless and the emotional disturbed and the
Do
teenagers.
it. Do it.
But then, don't you agree with defunding? Maybe the name is turning
Yeah, but
people
see,
off.
the thing is, what a lot of people don't realize too is when it comes to defunding the police. First of all, you heard I just got lost my job at the police academy. What was my job? I was an actor. I was an actor. We were doing training on how to handle mental illness, so you don't shoot people with mental illness. We would act out different mental illnesses, so that just got defunded. So that type of training could actually help, so police don't shoot somebody who's schizophrenic or bipolar, and being able to identify these things that we're talking about. The cops need more training. You just defunded it. And the second thing is, it's not a question of defunding the police. They what they want to do is they just don't want to pay for it.
Right.
See, when I came on the job in '92, there was something called Safe Streets, Safe Cities, because the crime here got so out of hand, and the federal government decided to step in, and they were going to create this program. And I was part of 3,000. There was, I think, 3 groups of 3,000 cops that came in on it, just to build up the police force. But what was the key word there? Federally funded. These people, they look around and they're looking at state troopers sitting on the side of the highway. This happened in another state. And they're like, why do we have to pay the police if we could just use the state troopers? Who pays for the state troopers? Federally funded. Do you know what I'm saying? They want to be able to use that budget money for whatever they want. They want access to it. They don't want it tied up in municipalities. So it's going to be privatized. All this shit is going to be privatized because people who have money are going to hire private security.
Yeah, you called that like 6 months ago, and now they're doing that, right? In Seattle, they hired that guy or whoever it is, the pimp.
Well, yeah, he's going to be some type of, I don't know. In the end, look, even that place Chop that they built up overnight, right. The first thing they did was put up borders, and they hired security, armed security. First night, they put a border that you had to identify yourself to get in, and they had armed security there. So, and that's in Utopia. That was they took them less than a day to create borders and arm the fucking. So that just goes to show you that it's very, very complicated situation to try and fix. And right now, we're just happen to be in the middle of, an election year, and it's getting closer and it's getting riled up. And, who always takes the blame for everything? Before Trump, it was the cops. And now it's still the cops while Trump is here. They're just the scapegoat. They're the first reach or access that you have to the government. So of course they're going to get the shit. If the people aren't happy, and it just goes to show you, people need to fight.
Yeah.
People need to, there has to be something in you. You got to get it out of your system early. That's why I hate to say it, man, but look at throughout our history, the wars are always there's always a war going on, some type of fighting, some type of conflict. Everybody talks about the indigenous people in this country. They were killing each other every fucking night. They were raping and pillaging. There would have been none. If we never showed up here, you think there would have been none of them left?
We, as human beings, I don't think there's ever been a peaceful existence of us on the planet.
Uh-huh.
And it's not about survival. You're right. We literally, because animals, usually it's about survival. They're fighting over food or territory. We're just like, I just hate you. That's how people are.
We're social beings, but we're easily annoyed.
Yeah, very easily annoyed.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, I need you, but don't annoy me. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my
well,
God.
On that note, what are you working on right now that we should know about?
Well, right now, that's a good question. I would go with my Love's a Joke album. That's just came out recently. So
is that on iTunes and stuff?
And it's playing on Sirius, so.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I was supposed to record an album in December with all the little accoutrements that come along with it, Sirius and all these other things.
Yeah,
but
Sirius is
now,
good. Yeah.
I don't know about, it's tough because, as far as doing police material, you'd have to be crazy to do that. As far as like a whole album of it too, you're really, you're kind of sort of limiting the amount of people. And then if you're not going to do that, then you got to come up with a whole other 45 minutes of material that, how do you not talk about what's going on right now? So it's really, really tough. I'm trying to make that thing happen, but we'll see. I want to mention the web series again, so people can check it out and see how talented you are. What a great actress! What a great comedic actress you are. It was the Lonely Girl, 69,
Lonely Girl 48.
48, Lonely Girl 48,
and Boston Beat.
Boston Beat. Is that a
B-E-A-T? B-E-A-T, that's the cop one. And there's Love in the Time of Quarantine. So those are 3 you could check out.
All right, all right. Just be careful out there. You know, I'm always here for you. And thanks for the advice, the tidbits. One of them, which is no earbuds.
Yeah.
The other one is this costs $1,000.
It costs
Remember
$1,000.
that.
You're waiving $1,000, and also just know there's an Office of Victim Services, and if you have renters or homeowners insurance, even if you get robbed outside the home, you could get reimbursed.
Well, that's a good thing to know too.
So renters insurance did pay me back for my belongings, purse, wallet, everything.
Yeah, and you know, listen, you cracked your cherry.
That's right, I did. I'm a New Yorker.
You're official now. You can talk shit at parties.
That's right. Well, thank you, Mark. I hope we catch up soon again.
All right, I look forward to it. Thanks for coming on. I'll let you know when this is going to air.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.